Folks, sometimes the most important stories don't arrive with flashing lights or screaming headlines. Sometimes they creep in quietly, tap you on the shoulder, and completely change how you see the future. That's exactly what's happening right now in Toronto, because while much of the conversation has been dominated by obvious names and headline prospects, there is one player whose emergence could fundamentally alter the trajectory of this team. This is far better than we initially thought, and as we inch closer to spring training, the Toronto Blue Jays appear to be sitting on a secret weapon that could redefine their season. Welcome back to the Blue Jays Report, because today's episode is the beginning of something much bigger than most people realize. As we approach one of the most critical springs in recent memory, the air around this team feels different. There's a hum beneath the surface, a sense that plans are quietly being set into motion. According to a recent report from Keegan Matheson, the Blue Jays have been laying the groundwork for a carefully managed, potentially explosive development path for a player who has almost slipped out of the public consciousness. Not because his talent faded, but because time, injury, and distraction pushed him out of the spotlight. That player is Ricky Tiedemann, and if everything breaks right, he may become the X factor nobody outside the organization is ready for. Before we go any further, do me a quick favor. If you enjoy deep dives like this, if you want daily insight as spring training unfolds, make sure you like the video, share it with fellow Jays fans, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report. This is the stretch where things start moving fast. Tiedemann's story already feels like a baseball fable. Once the crown jewel of the system, a former first-round pick whose name echoed through prospect rankings, he was the kind of pitcher who made scouts lean forward in their seats. Then came the injury. Tommy John surgery, the dreaded pause button on a young pitcher's momentum. He missed most of 2024 and effectively all of 2025, and in that silence, the conversation moved on. Fans shifted their attention elsewhere. New prospects emerged. New stars took center stage. But Tiedemann never disappeared. He was simply waiting. Now 23 years old, he's at a point where potential meets urgency. He's young enough to dream big but experienced enough to understand what it costs. And what makes this moment fascinating is how the Blue Jays are choosing to handle him. The plan, at least initially, isn't to throw him straight back into a full starter's workload. Instead, the door has been left deliberately open for something far more intriguing, a bullpen role that could unleash his stuff without overburdening his arm. If you've ever watched Tiedemann pitch, you'll know exactly why this idea is so enticing. This is a left-hander with electricity in his veins. We're talking about a fastball that touches the upper 90s, graded at an elite level, the kind of velocity that makes hitters late even when they know it's coming. In previous spring training appearances, before the injury, he diced through major league bats as though he was skipping stones across water. Calm, ruthless, efficient. That version of Tiedemann hasn't been forgotten inside the building. According to internal projections, his stuff appears to be returning. And that's where temptation creeps in. Because if the arsenal is back, if the command is even close, it becomes very difficult to keep a pitcher like this hidden. A left-handed power arm out of the bullpen isn't just useful, it's transformative. It changes how games are managed. It shortens innings. It gives managers flexibility and opponents headaches. This is why spring training will be so critical. Every appearance matters. Every pitch tells a story. The Jays will move slowly, but baseball history is littered with moments where slow plans accelerate very quickly once reality intervenes. If Tiedemann shows even flashes of his old dominance, the conversation shifts from development to deployment. What makes this even more compelling is the timing. The Blue Jays are coming off a season that, by any objective measure, was a success. A deep postseason run. A World Series appearance that ended in heartbreak but proved this team belongs on the biggest stage. And now, instead of tearing things down or scrambling for answers, they're refining. They're building layers. They're creating contingencies. Spring training this year feels different because the storylines are richer. You have questions around how new faces will adjust, how returning players will bounce back, and how the pitching staff will be managed. There's intrigue everywhere you look. And yet, Tiedemann sits quietly at the center of it all, a variable with the potential to swing outcomes. Of course, he isn't the only young arm drawing attention. Trey Savage remains the crown prince of the system, the name everyone knows, the prospect already being penciled into future rotations. Savage's brief major league exposure last season was electric. The underlying metrics were outrageous. Chase rates, whiff rates, ground balls, strikeouts, all pointing toward a pitcher with top-of-the-rotation upside. But even with Savage, caution is the watchword. The Blue Jays know all too well how fragile pitching careers can be. Managing innings, managing expectations, managing health. Savage is expected to contribute significantly this season, but the organization will be meticulous. He may be brilliant, but brilliance must be sustained, not rushed. The goal isn't a hot start. It's a long, dominant career. That's why Tiedemann's potential bullpen role is so fascinating. It allows the team to extract value without risking overload. It gives them another weapon without forcing uncomfortable decisions. Look at the current bullpen landscape and you'll see opportunity. There are solid arms, dependable pieces, but very few are untouchable. A high-octane lefty with starter-level stuff would instantly stand out. Zooming out, this speaks to the broader health of the organization. The Blue Jays pipeline is stronger than it's been in years. Not just in headline names, but in depth. That depth gives the front office flexibility. It allows them to entertain trades, to explore upgrades, to react rather than panic. This is no longer a system held together by hope. It's one built on options. Around the league, movement continues. Trades are being discussed, deals quietly negotiated, dominoes waiting to fall. Teams like the Astros, Cardinals, and Red Sox are constantly exploring multi-team scenarios, and Toronto is never far from those conversations. The Blue Jays may still add another piece, perhaps a bat, perhaps another reliever, but they're not operating from desperation. They're operating from strength. That context matters when evaluating losses as well. Yes, the departure of Bo Bichette stung. There's no denying that. But baseball isn't played on nostalgia. It's played on production. And there's a very real argument that internal improvement, health, and pitching depth can offset that loss. Offenses fluctuate. Pitching stabilizes. Championships are often built from the mound outward. Which brings us back to Tiedemann. Because while stars grab headlines, it's often players like this who decide seasons. The unexpected contributor. The arm nobody game-planned for in April but everyone fears by August. If he finds his rhythm, if his body holds, if his confidence grows, the ripple effect could be enormous. So as spring training approaches, pay attention to the quiet stories. Watch the early innings. Listen to the subtle cues from coaches and reporters. Because the beginning of something huge doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up, throws 99 miles an hour from the left side, and dares you to keep ignoring it. Let me know down in the comments how you feel about Ricky Tiedemann's potential role. Do you see him as a bullpen weapon this year, or a starter in waiting? How do you think the Jays should manage Trey Savage's workload? And where do you see this team stacking up as the season approaches? As always, thank you for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report, because spring training is almost here, and the real stories are only just beginning.